And I talked to the sheriff earlier, and he wasn't going to come today.
I didn't think I was going to make it, but I did. We've been assisting Henderson County on the search over there for the missing person. I'm sure everybody's well aware of all the hoopla in Transylvania and Henderson County, and there's still a missing person over there they're looking for, and we're trying to figure out, where he's at. And several of the sheriffs around in this end of the state just assisting and trying to help Henderson with anything we can.
That search area has expanded, and for people who are wanting to see a picture of the missing person, his name is Thomas Bryson. We have shared from Channel 13 on our Facebook page a picture of the missing man.
Right.
And apparently the man that was arrested, he was driving this man's truck, correct? He was.
During the search, they thought they had the suspect surrounded there in the Pisgah Forest, and in the middle of this, it came torrential downpours and storms come through and all those kind of things, and somehow he got through the containment. It seems like he got through the containment. We don't know exactly what happened at this point, but and then during this time frame, this person became missing. This gentleman became missing, and later, the suspect was found driving this gentleman's vehicle. So, I think the report from Patterson County was it was coming out of Yancey into McDowell, and there was a short chase ensued, and wound up deploying spike strips, and the car come to a stop, and the suspect took off running and was apprehended on scene there. But still, we got this gentleman missing, and nobody knows where he's at. And do we have information that he probably had come to Tennessee, in the Tennessee area? But at least toward Tennessee. You don't know if he actually made it to Tennessee or not. So they've got some clues, some things they're looking at and trying to figure out where this gentleman might be, but don't really know for sure what county or where at. So all of us are pitching in and just kind of assisting with Henderson County out there and trying to figure out if we can help them locate this gentleman and look at some identifying things from statements and stuff as to whether we think it might be in our county or a neighboring county or where it might be.
All right.
Yeah.
And the manhunt for he was a fugitive, wasn't he? He was. And that was like a 6-day long search until they actually captured him. And it was one of those situations.
I think it's been 3 days since the person's been missing.
3 days since the person's been missing?
Yeah.
All right. And people were asking on social media, how could they not find him in a quicker time? But if you think of the national forest here.
Right.
They are so many hiding places in a very large area, and the manpower, you just can't put a fence around that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like searching for a needle in a haystack.
It is.
For someone who doesn't want to be found.
It is, and you kind of think about this, as my dad put it this way to me one time when I was smaller. Mm-hmm. He said, you think about when you're in the woods and you're real still and you're real quiet and you watch a deer walk by or a bear or something like that, and they never know you're anywhere around. How many times are you walking through the woods and something's watching you, or an animal or somebody is watching you, and you have no idea they're there? Mm-hmm. And it kind of puts it in perspective in that way, is that literally in our mountainous terrains, you can walk within feet of people and not realize there's anyone in there or anybody there. And so it's very hard to apprehend people that's in the woods.
Yeah, and then there's the people that, like the hikers that get lost and are missing, who want to be found, and it takes days or weeks to find them because it is hard to find in such rugged terrain.
Yeah, and from having experience in aircraft and helicopters and stuff, when you're flying and looking down, with the tree canopies, it's hard to see anything in the forest if there's tree canopies. You've pretty much got to be out in a wide open space, to be seen. And even like hunting marijuana and stuff like that, it's got to be out in the open where you can see it. If it's under tree canopies and things, it's hard to find. It's hard to spot.
All right. Yeah. Is there an update to last week? We talked about a woman that was appearing in people's houses. Do you know if she has been located?
The latest report that I have is that she was located in Georgia. Mm-hmm. She did, I think, was arrested in Georgia and served about a week or so down there. There was some talk, and this is not confirmed. Georgia didn't say this, but there was some talk from some Facebook posts and other people that know the situation that she did go to a facility for some treatment.
Right.
Now, I don't know that for a fact. That's not anything that I know. Just what's out there on social media. But we do have investigators here in our county that are assigned to tracking her and locating her. My phone was going off. Locating her now to verify, whether those things are accurate or what's going on with her. So we're still in the process of trying to locate her here in North Carolina.
Were there any more places that she visited while in North Carolina that your office has been made aware of?
No, that last day that we talked about, that I think it was last Friday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, Hiawassee Dam and Caney Creek,
Caney
I think you
Creek,
mentioned.
Yeah, I think Caney Creek was the last incident here in Cherokee County. And then I think what happened after that, she had went to Georgia and was doing some of the similar things in Georgia and was apprehended in Georgia.
And we do learn so much from social media.
Right.
I learned that she was allegedly posing as an FBI informant and had a case with her and looked like canisters of film inside that she was scaring people when she'd open her upper case. And so a lot of people were asking questions on our Facebook page and to us particular about what was going on. But good to know that she was doing something similar in Blairsville and
yeah, and like I said before, I think she was doing similar things out toward Gastonia or somewhere out in that area, out in the Charlotte region too. So we're not really for sure what's going on with her because we haven't spoke with her personally. But we did make contact with Union County, and they did confirm that they did have her in custody in Union County at one point.
I know last week after the show, people became more cautious and on high alert, watching for that kind of situation in their neighborhoods.
Which brings back something I want to mention real quick before we go on with the show is the fact of, and I just feel the need to mention this, is I've noticed a lot talking about social media and Facebook posts. There's been a lot of talk about the eclipse coming up. There's been a lot of talk about trespassing. There's been a lot of talk about property rights and those kind of things. And I'm seeing more and more on Facebook of people posting things like shoot them first and ask questions later. And if you make us on my property, I'm going to take my gun out and do this or do that. I want to make sure that people understand that in North Carolina, you cannot use deadly force to defend property. You cannot use deadly force on trespassers. If someone, even during the eclipse, if they trespass on your property, that does not give you the right to take a firearm and point it at the person, or it does not give you the right to shoot someone or use any kind of force against a person. And I want to make sure our citizens understand that you can only use force, especially with a firearm, is if someone is threatening you to the point where you feel like your life is in danger or the life of someone else is in danger. As a matter of fact, even on your property, if somebody pulls into your driveway or your field and you barrel out of your house with a shotgun and you point it at them, you can be arrested for that, even though it's your own property. So I want to make sure that people understand that and get that message out there, that I believe that most of these people that were saying these things are not going to do anything anyway. I understand that. But I just want to make sure that our citizens understand that, is that you don't have a right to do that. And if someone shows up on your property, the proper thing to do is ask them to leave your property. Most people will comply and leave. If they don't leave, if they refuse to leave your property, then you need to call 911 and have an officer respond to that and let us take care of the trespassing issue. But simply just pointing guns at people or threatening people or shooting at people is not permissible in the event that happens. And the reason I mention that is we don't know how many people we'll have in our area. We don't know what it'll be like on that eclipse day. And we could very well face the possibility that people are pulling in driveways all over the county and pulling into open spots and parking lots and wherever they can find to park. And so we just want to make sure that if you don't want people on your property, be sure and post that property, barricade that property, put gates up, chains, ropes, whatever it may be.
Make it obvious.
Make it obvious that you don't want people there. And put signs up and things of that nature, and that way that there's not a question of whether you want somebody in your driveway or not. And if anybody comes across that barrier in your driveway, past your no trespassing signs, then there's obvious things that we need to deal with at that point.
Have we reached a level of panic among our community yet about the eclipse?
Yes and no.
Some people I've noticed are a little panicky about things. And some people are super excited.
Right. And I think we've got a good across-the-board gamut about that. there are people that are, especially our business people, people that are in official capacities with their towns, are very excited about this, that people are coming to the area, boosting the economy a little bit, people spending money, the schools I know in different places are selling parking spaces, selling places for people to set up tents, so they're excited about that, and so there's some real excitement generated with that. But I think when you come on this other end of it, as far as people who just wants to stay home, who just wants to be peaceful and
just be left alone,
then you get on that spectrum of it too, and then you get kind of a little bit of panic on that end of it. I think most people are like me, kind of a good combination of anxious and terrified all at the same time, because it is an exciting thing, and it is something that we are excited about, and it's a once in a lifetime event, and that people will remember this for the rest of their life. Kids will be able to tell their kids about it, and the excitement of the people coming to the area. But it is also a little bit terrifying on the fact of not knowing what to expect, not knowing how many people will be in the area, not knowing how it'll affect crime, how any tragedies that may occur and things of that nature. For my seat, that's a little bit nerve-wracking for me. But I think I'm more on the excited side than I am on the anxious or terrified side. So I think we'll just have to just live through it and see what happens.
Last night I shared on our Facebook page, this is where I want to be during the eclipse, that NASA is actually chasing the total solar eclipse. They're going to see about 7 minutes of it, because they have the jets, the WB-57F jets that are
following the shadow.
They're following it and taking 30 frames per second video of it. So it's going to be some amazing photography from those jets.
Right.
And so I'm trying to talk to NASA to see if I can ride along.
Yeah. Well, we do have a guest with us today.
We do.
Our jail captain, Mark Patterson, was going to fill in for me when I didn't think I was going to be here today, and he graciously was able to step in. Mark Thigpen normally steps in, and his pastor last night and family was involved in a wreck, and so that he spent the night with them out at the hospital, trying to make sure they were going to be okay, and so he's home catching some rest and things of that nature. So since he was unavailable, Captain Patterson volunteered to step in and talk a little bit about the jail. So, and he'll also mention again about the moving wall and things of that nature. So good to have you here this morning.
Good morning, Captain Patterson.
Thank you for having me. I believe thank yous in order here.
He is always so excited to be here.
He is.
Everybody knows how I just love talking in front of people, and even though we're not in front of a bunch of people, it's still the same.
It's just me and Tim.
Yeah, just the three of us in the room right now.
But I was going to let everybody know about the inmates we house for other counties and other. We're actually doing pretty good in that area, bringing in quite a bit of money there. Macon County's for the month of June, Macon County's bill was about $26,000. So that's quite a bit of money there. And federal inmates we house was right around $15,000 for them. Another $800 come in from Jackson County for housing their inmates. So the jail's actually got a little bit of money coming in to help offset the cost and everything there.
I will tell you one thing about the jail too. I found it kind of amusing. If you've looked at our page where we bring people in, we brought a group of people in from Gastonia, from Gaston County, and they were having some overcrowding problems down there and was needing somewhere to put them. So how many people was that, Captain? They brought
15.
They brought 15 inmates up to our jail, and so we kept them here for a week or two. And the day they were going back to Gaston County, I happened to walk through the jail that day, and they were all talking about how wonderful the jail was and how great it was here and how much better than it was than Gaston County. And they were actually making statements that our local inmates don't know how good they have it. They don't know how good the jail is here. And I kind of chuckle because which I kind of discouraged him from doing it. But one of the inmates actually said that he thinks that when he gets out, he may just move here to Cherokee County. So if he ever gets in trouble again, he'll get locked up in our jail. So I try to discourage him from moving here and getting in trouble in Cherokee County.
Yeah, don't get in trouble here.
Yeah. Yes. So, but the jail has come a long way, and they made a lot of improvements there. And we've done a lot of different policies and procedures there at the jail, and some like it, some don't. But one thing I do want to mention, Captain Patterson is very good about anytime we do a policy change or anything like that, or change our hours or anything we do, we not only check it, but we double check it and triple check it with the state inspector, with the jail inspector, with the Attorney General's office, and also with the feds, because we do house federal prisoners. And we check it in 3 or 4 different places, just to make sure that we're not violating any laws or any rules or anything like that. And so Captain Patterson's very good about that, to make sure, that we check on that and that we're not violating anything.
I always like to look it up in the general statute book to make sure I'm not violating anybody's rights or breaking any laws. Then I call, as Sheriff mentioned, the jail inspector and get his opinion on it. Mm-hmm. I call other jail administrators in the western end of the state before we do any policy changes like it. I always like to make sure I've got all the bases covered before we do something like it.
Yeah. I mean, even though that someone may be in there for doing something bad, they are still humans,
right? And
should be treated with decent
human
rights.
And it's a tightrope walk. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, is because believe it or not, they will take advantage of you. Mm-hmm. And inmates will try to get away with whatever they can get away with. Mm-hmm. And so it's a tightrope walk of keeping discipline, of keeping order, of making sure that people are safe and that no one hurts themselves or others. But also, like you say, treating them as human beings and making sure that you're not violating any of their rights, or making sure that you're not mistreating them in any way. And so it is a tightrope walk sometimes with that, just to make sure that we do keep discipline and order there within the facility.
It's kind of like raising someone with tough love.
It is.
Yes.
A lot of times it is. And a lot of the people that come into the facility, they come from a life of no discipline. Mm-hmm. They come from a life from the time they were children, of doing what they want to do, how they want to do it, when they want to do it. And so when they come to a place that has rules and regulations, sometimes it's hard for those folks to follow. It's hard for them to stay within the parameters and the guidelines. And because of that, sometimes they do get in trouble. And because of that, sometimes they do pitch fits and file grievances and call the newspapers and and do all these things, But we are very adamant that we don't do anything without checking it and double checking it and triple checking it. And if we do find that something is going on there, that someone is messed up or made a mistake, then we try to create policies and things to prevent that from happening again. And so we're very good about that. And not only with these numbers that have come in here, but I think right now we're operating about $300,000 less than we were in 2014. Wow. And so we're doing more, got more prisoners, and keeping more going there, but keeping the money down and keeping things lower than it was even 3 years ago. So,
and when we house inmates from out of county or federal inmates, the detention center actually becomes a revenue producing facility, correct?
It does, but that can be deceiving sometimes. Mm-hmm. And let me mention that is because the previous administration, that's one of the things they boast about, was the revenue coming in of things. And you remember that we used to do Meals on Wheels and all those kind of things. In order to look at things from a perspective of whether you're benefiting the county or whether you are doing things you should or shouldn't do, you've got to look at more than just the revenue, because you've got to look at the expenses that go involved in that. And so, for example, like when we were doing the Meals on Wheels program, we were losing on average, once we figured in the cost to the cooks, the transportation, the facilities, the freezers we had to buy, all those type of things, we were actually, even though we were bringing in about $97,000 in revenue, we were actually spending well over $100,000 to get that $97,000. So we were going close to $30,000 in the hole every year with that program. And so, like I say, when you talk about revenues and you talk about federal inmates and you talk about these state inmates and stuff that we're keeping, you've also got to figure in the what it costs for extra detention officers if you need them, for transports, for all those kind of things. But the good things with these is that we get reimbursed for most of the stuff that we spend. And especially with the federal inmates, we get reimbursed mileage, we get reimbursed medical and all those kind of things.
Also, we get reimbursed for officers' time On the jail housing fees, it's, whatever expense there is, whatever county we're housing them for is responsible for that expense. So when we say we're taking in $40 a day for that person, it's pretty much $40 a day. There's no out-of-pocket expense for that. So
anybody who's run a business has run a profit and loss sheet statement and a balance sheet just to get their taxes done. So it's good to see, even with the government facilities, that there has to be some kind of accounting. You can't just spend.
Well, when you look at the profit loss sheet, one of the things I want to expound on what I was saying before is that, which we're not in a position where we've had to do that. It's just something you have to consider. Is federal inmates, for example, has been low. It's been low across the state. When President Obama was in, and it started into moving away from blue collar crimes into white collar type stuff and terrorism, and so a lot of our drugs and a lot of the things that the federal government was charging is no longer charging and not getting through the court system, and so that federal inmate population started coming way down low across the state. But when you think about that, when you talk about profit and loss, you got to think about the fact of, in Cherokee County Jail, if we're running 4 or 5 officers a shift, to take care of those inmates, if we start running at capacity, say we start getting a bunch of federal inmates, start getting a bunch of other counties, and we're at full capacity, and 4 or 5 people can't handle it, and we have to hire extra people to come in, then you have to count that as an expenditure, for housing these people. So, and I'm not saying it wouldn't be worth it. I'm just saying you have to figure all that in to get your net profit. And so sometimes we are guilty a lot of times of just looking at the revenue and saying, well, we brought in 90,000 or brought in 100,000, but what was your expenditures to get to that?
Right.
And so that's one of the things that we're constantly evaluating and looking at, and these programs that the jail runs and that we try to do through the sheriff's office, we try to figure in pennies into that to see what that actual net profit is, and not just revenue coming in.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Captain Patterson, what's your job description? What all do you do there at the sheriff's office?
Well, basically just running the jail. My all detention officers' main job is to keep the inmates safe and keep them from hurting themselves and each other, and then officer safety is also number one. But there's accounts payable and receivable. I mean, it's a lot like running a business.
Mm-hmm. All right.
One of the things too that Captain Patterson does at the jail is our inmate work program, and so we've kind of changed that a little bit over the years. To previously, in years past, they ran a farm and had gardens and those type of things. But like I say, you got to figure in the expenditures of that. You got to figure in seed and fertilizer and time of detention officers, and actually how much of that goes to waste and doesn't get used, and all those kind of things. So we've took a little bit different turn with that in the last 2 or 3 years, and the fact of that we're spending our inmates more now doing like mowing jobs, litter pickup. I know Gary Chamberlain's a champion for a litter pickup in the county, and so that's a passion of his. And so one of the things that we try to do is at least once a week, sometimes more than that, but at least once a week, we try to get the inmates out somewhere on the roadside picking up litter and trash. And then in addition to that, we have them out in the summertime doing mowing jobs. We try to clean up cemeteries and try to clean up things that have grown up. I know that there's there between the Church of Christ and Journey Church there in 64 West, above where the new Ford place is, there's a little cemetery in there between them that actually has some Civil War people buried in there, some soldiers, and it's an extremely old cemetery. And we were up there one day and noticed that had grown up, and so we got permission to go in and clean that up. And by the way, I noticed it's grown up again another day. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, Sheriff. It just reminded me we need to get out there and
do that. So those type of things is what we're looking for, is try to get those inmates out and give back to the community. Our inmates also went down and helped get Hanging Dog ready, campground, and helped work on it to get it back ready again. The wintertime, they do a firewood program where we gather and split firewood, and then we'll deliver to senior citizens and people in need within the county. So we're trying to utilize that inmate work program more for trying to help the community.
I know the community really does appreciate that, and they've noticed that, but that doesn't come without cost, does it?
Right. And still, you've got to figure in when you're out doing those projects, you've got mowing equipment, you've got gasoline, you've got detention officer you got to pay to maintain that work crew and watch them, so there's a cost involved in that.
Even like the porta potties, you have to have a place for them to use the restroom,
right,
correct?
Yeah. And so if you've noticed too, we've went to, I think it was Franklin County, and got a work trailer that they donated to us out there that's got a porta potty involved in it, and it's got a place to lock the tools up and transfer stuff back and forth, place to throw their trash when they pick it up on the roads and things of that nature. So we're constantly reaching out to other sheriff's offices, other communities, to try to get resources that we don't have to spend county dollars to do that with. But there is a cost to it. Like I say, you do have fuel, you have gasoline, you have mowing equipment and things that you can't get around. You do have to spend money on.
Right.
But we feel like if we're doing it for the benefit of our community, we feel like that it's money well spent.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, the moving wall. Let's talk about that before we run out of time.
I didn't write down Pat's number. Do you have that?
It's right here.
Oh, it's down at the bottom. If you recall last week, we talked about the moving Vietnam Memorial Wall, and we want to try to mention this every week until time. It's there at October 5th through the 9th. This is, and for those that may not understand, this is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal for the wall to come to Murphy. It travels all over the place. It goes to different locations that people can go view the wall and find their loved ones on it, and it's got all the names of all the people that was killed in the Vietnam War, and so people can go find their loved ones and relatives there that's on the wall. It is coming to the Band of Brothers Veterans Park on Carriage Lane here in Murphy. That's October 5th through the 9th. Roger and Pat Swanson was very instrumental in getting this